You'll know why I'm umming later on. Crypto collapse. Uh-oh. Billions wiped off its market cap. We'll get into it. Gold had itself a week. Rates are looking steady. The Dow's at 34, ended the week flat. A lot to get into. We'll talk about the new Doge. Nick, how are you today? I'm Gerardo Del Real. This is episode 114 of Bizarro World. I have a very important question for you, Nick, other than how are you?
I'm doing great, and I'd love to hear it.
Do you have your cum rocket?
Oh, gosh. In college. No, I'm joking.
This is the new Doge. This is the new Doge, everybody. The cum rocket.
Now I'm umming. Gosh, I got nothing to say.
We're going to talk about, this was a group that at its peak, we're going to get to the markets in a second. I'm in a silly mood. You guys are going to have to bear with me today. But at its peak, the Orgasmic meditation group, this is a real group. It still has a website up. It's called One Taste, was making millions and was endorsed by...
The taste of the cum rocket?
I swear. I'll tie it all in together in a second. It was making millions and was endorsed by the high priestess of the vagina, none other than Gwyneth Paltrow.
Of course.
This is the real story of a multi-million-dollar orgasm cult that was endorsed by none other than Hollywood itself. So we're going to get into that a little bit. The is how they would instigate and, get these 3-hour orgasms in some cases, apparently, out. So we'll talk about that. But look, it's a bizarro world out there, everybody. There's a lot going on. We'll talk the Chauvin verdict with the George Floyd trial, accountability, which we're big on here. We'll talk about Mormon sex therapist, Afghanistan, McConnell. The digital horses are back, and Caitlyn Jenner and Matthew McConaughey want to be governors of California and Texas, respectively. But first and foremost, buying opportunity in crypto, Nick, or the beginning of the end, the death of crypto.
Does the cum rocket come with an appropriately scented candle of Gwyneth Paltrow or otherwise that may or may not be able to be NFT? Because it seems to me like we could all just become really rich if we could all get behind that.
Get behind the cum rocket.
Oh my goodness, Gerardo. It's crazy out there. Opportunity in the crypto. I'm going to talk about Bitcoin because I don't know about all the other stuff. The cum rockets.
Or the Doge. The Doge.
Yeah.
The Doge just sold last week ago.
That reminds me. I'll get to that in a second. I think buying opportunity. I was looking yesterday and I saw the headlines. I think last evening it's the collapse of Bitcoin, end of days. It's and it was, I guess, a sort of volatile kind of day, but certainly still up. Bitcoin 40-50% year to date, and it's April, and so I'm not sure it's a collapse as much as it is consolidation. And so I think the adoption is getting wider and wider. I think that it's here to stay, and you can point to any number of indicators. And so, no, I think it's a buying opportunity in Bitcoin. All the other stuff, I've always separated the shit coins, as it were. And so, but the media, and that's what I wanted to touch on, obviously sensationalizes it, and it makes you think you're missing out and that all these people are getting rich. Like one of the first stories I saw this morning was CNBC was touting this guy who, he's like a Dogecoin millionaire. And this guy's talking about, I stayed up all night with that day because we were talking about it, that, went up a couple 100% in a week. And we talked about it last week, how people were texting me. But anyway, on CNBC, he was saying, and they were tweeting this article, and they had it on TV about this guy who was, bought Dogecoin and is now a millionaire. But what's buried in the thing is that he started with 180 grand into $1 million. And so I'm not demeaning a 5 or 5.5 bagger by any means. I'm all for people making money. Kudos to the guy.
Absolutely.
But are we going to put somebody on TV every time they have a 5 bagger? Because I missed several opportunities to get my CNBC retweets. If that's what we're going to do, is I guess what I'm saying. And so to have that sensationalized, like Dogecoin is turning people into millionaires. Yeah, but there's a lot of other things that are turning people into millionaires as well. And so that's like a 5 bagger return, which obviously, Gerardo, you and I have had several of. And so anyway, you asked the question, is it a buying opportunity in crypto? And the answer is, yeah, I think for Bitcoin specifically, it's healthy pullback.
Agreed. I completely agree. I think it's a healthy pullback, but I think that's all it is. I think it's absolutely headed higher. For anyone that may think that I made up come rocket, I swear to you, it's real. I'm not being vulgar for vulgarity's sake. It surged 634% in a single day. The market cap now of a cummy, as they call it, they call it a cummy.
You can spend your stimmy on a cummy?
You can spend your stimmy on a cummy and get relief. The market cap is now over $140 million. I have a gold company, Magna Gold. I'll give you some free names right off the bat to make up for the humor and the childish display of jokes. Magna Gold is projected, to produce 55 to 65,000 ounces this year. I encourage anybody with a calculator to pull it out, take the mean, call it 60,000 ounces, $1,800 gold, punch in the numbers, or I'll make it even simpler for you. Just take the 60,000 and multiply it by the $700 in profit margin that they're going to make approximately off of each ounce. And you get $42 million in free cash flow, right? And that thing's got a market cap of about $70 million US. So it's going to make almost as much in free cash flow as its entire market cap right now. The mine is in production. The ramp up was successful. And they have other satellite deposits that are likely to add to that number. And by the way, they're on the M&A trail. I highlight all this to say, yes, a cummy is funny. It makes for an easy joke. The Dogecoin is literally a joke. And here it is worth more than the entire uranium sector as of a few days ago. And you have companies that have real value, are getting more valuable by the day in real dollars and getting zero respect in the market. This won't last forever, everybody. This is the roaring 20s with technology, right? And so like the roaring 20s, I don't know if you know what happened in the 30s in America and around the world, but it didn't end well. And so jokes aside, if you are, making money off your cummies and your Dogecoin and your crypto, whatever it is, make sure that you're taking a little bit off the table and make sure that, you're investing or speculating with a little bit of that capital into things that are real, hard assets, depending on your income level. Just diversify. It's important. So just how you made a 634% in a single day with a cummy, you might lose 634% one morning, right? And so just a word of caution amongst the jokes there. That's all I got to say on that one. Anything to add to that, Nick?
It's an eruption, as it were. But Gerardo, that's all so boring because, Bloomberg was tweeting this week that this billionaire just tripped on LSD and understood crypto. That. And that's why, bro, he bought it and did so well. And then, man, he tripped again and looked at SPACs. And now he's all over the SPAC sector because now he tripped and his mind understands it. And so that's all the analysis and diligence you need, bro. The guy that became a millionaire on Dogecoin, his fundamental analysis was that he liked the meme it was based on, man, and the support of the Reddit community. And so you're cash flows and your valuations, I don't know, Gerardo. I'm just gonna trip my balls off and see what crypto I should buy next. It's like monkeys and darts, I think. So onto the Roaring Twenties. I don't think it's going to last. And I'll share a bit of insight from the gentleman who coined the name of the millennials, who was actually writing about this week, because people are calling it the Roaring Twenties because of the euphoria in the markets. But he's saying the generations are way off, because ain't no way these millennials with their high-rise mom jeans are about to get down for an entire millennia, for an entire decade. Like, they aren't the right cohort to do it. And so exactly what you said, it's not a parallel decade. It can't be, for generational reasons. And so I agree.
And listen, let me bring it all back together. We talked about the Cum Rockets, and we talked about, the gentleman that, the bro that was tripping and just figured out the secrets is investing and speculating. And kudos to him, and congrats on his success. I wish him all the success. I wish anybody that deserves it all the success in the world, right? But you can believe your own narrative. It's very easy in this world of technology that we live in, right? And I think the story about the multi-million-dollar orgasm cult that was endorsed by Hollywood is a perfect example of people just believing their own bullshit. It's as simple a story as you can get, mixed with the cocktail of some celebrity endorsement and 3-hour orgasms. And 3-hour orgasms, tough to resist, right? Look, this is how this started. In 1994, a Californian-born woman named Nicole Dado joined, I probably messed her last name up, but apologies, joined a community of orgasm researchers, air quotes, called...
I too, Gerardo. I too am an orgasm researcher.
Did you join in 94?
I'm 83 mint.
And so it was called the Welcomed Consensus, not WELCUMMED, but WELCOMED, the Welcomed Consensus. And she developed a technique called orgasmic meditation. And what orgasmic meditation is, a woman lies on a nest of pillows and butterflies her legs. This is the description by the founder, draping a leg over a fully clothed man besides her. He sets a 15-minute timer, and wearing latex gloves, he then touches the upper left quadrant of the clitoris. And so then fast forward 2004, right? They get this, they master this technique. Guitar players excelled. It was beautiful. And in 2004, she set up a One Taste Urban Retreat. I'm not making these names up. A One Taste Urban Retreat. And she hoped to promote orgasmic meditation as a way to make orgasm, connection, and sensuality sustainable. The community grew to about 50 members, most in their late 20s, right? And this is what they called it, oming 2 to 3 times a day with various research partners. They were offered a menu of services. You could get a workshop, Nick, for $195. You could subscribe and sign up for a week-long Urban Monk program that set you back a couple of $1,000. And if you were really about it and really wanted to you could train to become a certified coach for $16,000. $16,000. And so the instructor said that oming resonated particularly deeply with the techies, right? Silicon Valley was an amazing place to market. And, you fast forward and Khloe Kardashian swore by orgasmic meditation. Gwyneth Paltrow really mainstreamed this. And without getting too deep into it, obviously, this ended with lawsuits and allegations of staff being coerced into having sex with men to entice them to take courses. A lot of nasty stuff that allegedly happened, a lot of abuse. One Taste has, refuted all of the allegations. In October of 2018, Bloomberg ran an expose. All of this is verifiable. You could Google this. I'm not making any of this up. And, the founder disappeared, and we haven't heard from her since. And the cult of the Orgasmic continues to thrive. There's a new website. I looked, I checked. It's there by former members, and it invites users to learn to ohm for free. So if you are bored one day and you have a few hours to spare, y'all, just, give it a go. Give the Google a little bit of work and
You know what they say, if they offer it for free, you're the product.
Exactly. So yeah, again, it's very easy to believe your own narrative, folks. Question your thoughts, question everything. It's healthy. Disagree with people you like. Do it civilly, hopefully, but healthy dose of skepticism is good. It's good. Let's talk gold. Another kind of a boring week. I mean, yeah, we had we closed at 1776, whatever, right? Touched 1793.60, pulled back. That's resistance right now in my eyes. It's got to break through that. Last week I said it had to break through 1770 to kind of shoot higher. It did that. So let's see if it can break 1794 next week. Any thoughts on gold?
Flat like rates.
Yep.
Which, we had pulled back a little bit last week, which was weird. We had said it was weird that people were fleeing to safety if the stock market was supposedly so good. But then the rates sort of went sideways. They did stay down where they were, but then they went sideways starting earlier this week. And so then gold started to go sideways, but it went sideways from a little bit of a higher base, as you say, up around 1776. So boring because it was sideways, and nonetheless, stocks go on to shake off their couple of rocky days earlier in the week as well. And so interested to see as more earnings come out, how long this bull market in stocks can continue to last. And like you say, boring because sideways for rates and gold.
Speaking of rates, Uncle Joe is coming for the rich, Nick. Let's get into it.
I had a whole section of the podcast about it a couple of weeks or months ago when we were talking about Yellen and capital gains and transactional taxes and people making, I think it was over 400 or something it was. Yeah, we had a whole section about it. I mean, it concluded with me telling you to start getting prepared and contact a tax professional or two, an accountant and a tax attorney, because look, I mean, they're spending so much money that they're going to have to pay for it somehow. And the other thing we touched on was that they should be going after these corporations that pay zero taxes and employ all these different sorts of tax havens. But that's a whole nother matter. So anyway, yeah, we saw this coming, easily foreshadowed.
Do you think it passes, or do you think this is a starting point? I mean, the Biden administration is already walking back some of this, saying it'll likely end up being somewhere in the mid to high 30s, not the 42 or 43.4% that has been, the headline because it gets clicks, right?
I don't think they could pass the headline number there. No, I mean, goodness, we're going to see the government likes their money, and if they can't agree on anything else, they can often agree on taxes, even if they publicly say otherwise or decry them. And so I think you probably see some sort of altering of the Trump tax bill that got passed a couple of years ago. And so I don't know what the number's going to be, but I do think you see some sort of changes. Yeah.
Did you hear about the Matt Gaetz sex allegations? This guy is hilarious, man, in a nasty way. I hope the allegations aren't true because it involves potentially a minor. But the way in which it played out is just, again, irony at its finest, political irony at its finest. Have you kept up with this at all?
To a minor degree, and the story seems crazy. Go ahead and enlighten us, but it seems like again, the writers are going working overtime.
It's insane. So Elon Musk, somebody was giving Elon Musk, trolling him, giving him a hard time on Twitter, and somebody said something about Muskgate, and Gates chimed in and said, if there's ever a scandal about me, I want it to be Matt Gaetz Gate, right? Or something along those lines. It was corny and cheesy. And sure enough, 5 days later, right? federal prosecutors announced that they've been investigating sex trafficking charges against a gentleman by the name of Joel Greenberg, who's a local tax collector and a political ally of Mr. Gates. And so it appears, this is what it sounds like to me. And I said this about, the white supremacists and how I thought that they were doing some of the things that they were doing because they were allowed to by law enforcement. And I speculated that a lot of them were federal informants. So far, so good on that front. That was clear as day to me back then. It appears to me that Mr. Greenberg probably outed little Matt. And I think you're going to see a plea deal sometime soon. And that's not good for Mr. Gates if Mr. Gates was indeed sugar daddying underage girls. And that's what it sounds like at this point. Greenberg was charged, and he's apparently ready to plead out to this, with sex trafficking a 17-year-old girl and using state databases to look up information about her and others with whom Mr. Greenberg was engaged in sugar daddy relationships with. And the thing that kind of tipped me off that this had some legs is when the story first broke, Gates did two things. He said, I absolutely deny any and all charges of impropriety. But if you're going to prosecute me for being generous with past girlfriends, then I am guilty of that. That is a heck of a first statement to make when you are being accused of potentially, at the very least, prostitution, soliciting prostitution, and at the worst, from what it looks like, trafficking underage girls. Ugly, ugly stuff all the way around. Ironic the way that it played out. Also ironic that Gates is the only one that voted against a bill a few years ago that would give a committee more oversight to prosecute people that were engaged in sex trafficking of underage minors. I thought that was, again, another bit of nasty irony in this whole case. A lot of nasty stuff there. It's, I'll leave it there. I won't get into, why we left and when we left and we started our, own thing and the reasons behind that. I'll leave that alone for the time being. But, the bottom line is I think eventually we'll figure out what happened, how it happened, whether there's merit to the allegations. And look, I don't root for anybody to commit this type of conduct or engage in this type of conduct. So I hope it's false. And he's, acquitted of all charges, and I hope it's not true. But if it is, put that motherfucker under the prison, because I have zero time for anybody that's, trafficking young girls or, exploiting young girls, because that's not a one-off. We've seen with Epstein. We've seen with all the enablers there. We've seen it recently this week with a lady by the name of Valerie Moser, who was, basically a pimp. And she was one of these pimps that would go and solicit the young girls or the woman, even when it was consensual, that weren't aware that the acts that they were performing on video for money, which and sometimes were consensual, were being published on Pornhub. And so she was just arrested for sex trafficking. Obviously, it's not just a one-off. She wasn't the only person doing this. It takes a whole village to enable this type of behavior. And this is the stuff where I really want, the FBI and law enforcement to concentrate on, leave the marijuana alone, leave all the, parking ticket stuff alone. Go get these assholes, the people that are doing this to people, because this is where I want my tax dollars to go. Nasty stuff all the way around anyway.
Yeah, you wonder who knows what in those situations, right? Sort of like the Epstein thing and why things don't get revealed or followed up on or investigated, etc. And so, he's still in office, this guy, right?
He resigned.
He did resign.
He did resign from what I recall, and I could be off on that. I'll double check, but I do recall him saying he's stepping down. So we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. It's a lot of there's a lot of throwing of bricks to glass houses and hiding of hands, and it's always interesting to me who does it and how it comes back, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure he has just a quick look, but there's people calling for it for sure.
So he's still a member of the representative.
Congress, yeah, yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Well, let's see how that plays out. Let's keep it to, crazy in Florida, which Florida always, tries to one up everybody. Do you read about the new riot law?
I didn't. You're gonna have to enlighten me, Gerardo.
So, I don't know if you noticed, but there's like this social movement going on where people are kind of tired of like corruption and corrupt police officers abusing their power, and people, whether they're of color or not, just people in general being abused by corrupt police officers. And so there's been demonstrations in the streets, right? And apparently, Florida has decided that the way to go about making sure that everybody's freedom of speech in Florida is protected, because of course, right? Why wouldn't a Republican governor want to enable and encourage freedom of speech as long as it's peaceful? As long as it's peaceful. So what Governor Ron DeSantis has decided to do is they've created a bill to create tougher penalties for people who participate in violent protests, which, okay, I again, there's laws in place for that. Arrest the people that are being violent, treat them with, the due process that everybody deserves, and go convict them in court. But now this bill allows for people, and it facilitates people being able to run over people. So it takes it takes the current law and it makes it to where if you are on a street and see a group of protesters and you interpret them to be violent and you interpret yourself to be in danger, you could just hit the accelerator and barrel on through. And so again, doesn't sound very freedom of speechy to me. It's interesting to me that some of my libertarian friends and my Republican friends haven't come out and said, hey, we can prosecute the violent rioters and the protesters without making it easier for people to run people over, because we saw all summer long, Nick, this past summer, many instances of people in vehicles that weren't just running over violent protesters. They were running over protesters holding signs up, minding their business. And so, troubling stuff. I mean, I don't know if y'all are paying attention out there, but troubling stuff.
Well, I'm your libertarian friend, and I'll say that that's obviously a bullshit, right? You can't, do eye for an eye like that and make citizens judge, jury, and literally executioner the way cops have been lately. And so
lately,
right? Oh yeah. And a quick look seems like he's already being sued, right? So we'll see how this plays out. But clearly, this seems like more, I don't know, headline politics than, well, I guess it is actual policy, but doesn't hopefully going to stand.
I mean, the bill grants civil immunity to people who drive into peaceful demonstrators if the demonstrators are blocking a road. It's insane.
Well, then that's not even what is that? I mean, you can just run over peaceful people now. That's an utter violation of civil rights, and so it's not going to stand.
And then it also makes it a second-degree felony to destroy or demolish a memorial, a plaque, a flag, or a painting, structure, or other object that commemorates historical people or events. That would be punishable by up to 10 years in prison. So again, I consider myself a libertarian, and I lean left on some things, I lean right on other things, but overall, I want less government. I want responsible, efficient government. I want to be left alone. I want to follow the law. I want to be looked after because I pay taxes for you to do that. And that's it. Keep it simple. But, they want to make it a second-degree felony to destroy a flag or a painting or structure that commemorates historical people or events. This would be punishable by up to 10 years in prison. So if I see a thin blue line flag, which to me is a version that was not intended by our founders, because I hear that argument all the time, is that the desecration of an object that commemorates historical people or events? And would those people be punishable? Like, would that offense be punishable? Would they be subject to be punished by up to 10 years in prison? Or are we just passing bullshit laws to target the flavor of the month? The flavor of the month being Confederate statues coming down, schools being renamed, and just changing back and forth selectively with whatever fits the moment and your political ideology. Because again, that's dangerous. And it's dangerous in a place like America. I expect to see some of this stuff in some other countries. It worries me to see stuff like that here.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, hopefully it doesn't stand. And so it would also have to cut both ways, and you would be interested to see how it was enforced the other way, right? Because this is clearly targeted at one group, like you said.
Agreed. And again, this is my theme this week. Last week it was police corruption and police abuse and how to make it right, because we love our law enforcement, the ones that do it right and actually, protect society and do things the way they're supposed to. We want good cops. We want better cops. And so did you see McConnell's comment on Asian hate crimes and the bill that recently passed?
I saw the bill. I didn't see the turtles' comments.
So Mr. McConnell, the turtle, says that the spike in anti-Asian violence and harassment, which is absolute bullshit, any anything that's violent and harassing, again, there's laws in place, arrest those fucking people and get them out of there, right?
Sure.
Whatever it is.
Sure.
Simple. If you're targeting innocent cops, if you're targeting innocent Asian old ladies, whatever it is, arrest those fuckers, get them out of here. But when McConnell was asked about the overwhelming legislation on Thursday to report and review anti-Asian hate crimes, he said that a big reason was because his wife was born in Taiwan, and, he understands, because his wife was born in Taiwan and is of Asian descent, of course, that this is a real problem. And again, great that he's supporting something that seems like common sense to all of us. But not great that it has to affect our politicians directly in order for them to act. You are voted by a constituency that has enabled you to exist, get a great salary, get great benefits, to represent the people. And yes, your wife is a part of the people, but we have to quit enabling lawmakers on both sides of the aisle that only act in their best interest, because that's how we got into the mess that we got into right now with lobbyists and money is speech and all the other craziness that we're dealing with now. And so, again, the comments disturbed me, not because I don't agree with him, because it seemed like that was the primary motivator. And it seems like unless it affects directly and personally one of these lawmakers, most of them don't care. There's some good ones, just like everything else, but most of them don't seem to care. That's all I got on that one.
I have to tell you, the bill is just weird because you're giving the federal government new powers, which obviously I'm opposed to. A hate crime is a hate crime, whether it's against a black person, an Asian person, a white person, a gay person, or a straight person, right? And so, we dish it out on both sides here. And so, who the lone dissenter was the guy we've called an asshole before, and that's Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri, right? The guy that was saying what I just said. And then I'll tell you what Reason Magazine was writing about this bill. In addition to it giving the powers to the federal government to define new hate crimes, was that it did nothing to alleviate the true racism and anti-Asian things that go on in U.S. universities, where they're routinely and openly discriminated against for having higher math scores, and those math scores are discounted, which leads to more white people getting into colleges, even though they don't have as high of test scores as Asians. And so if you want to not discriminate against Asians and pass a bill for it, maybe you should address the very open discrimination that goes on against Asians.
Clearly. Again, it seems like common sense, right? The recurring theme on this podcast is common sense isn't so common nowadays, and it sure in the hell is not by the people that have been elected to lead. And so I look forward to a new group of people that come up and lead in a different way, because this isn't cutting it.
I think it's coming, Gerardo. We already talked about the fourth turning once.
Yes, sir. Many times. The digital horses are back, Nick.
Well, we don't even have to spend a lot of time, Gerardo, because we've talked about them so much that, we didn't even know that they were going to come back, but of course they did. And so I'm not even going to pull up the article. Basically, it's the same iteration of what we told you before. And the last time around was 3 or 4 years ago. The last time crypto ran hard, and I think it was the founder of Atari was going to promote a deal that involved crypto horses, as we've discussed. You have a horse on the blockchain, and you pay real money to buy it in cryptocurrency and train it, and you race it. And that's it. But now, they're back in a new iteration, because of course they are. We've been talking about crypto land and crypto voxels and Decentraland and real estate in the metaverse. And of course, the digital horse racing is back, where you're owning horses on the blockchain again and racing them, because why not, right?
Why not? Indeed. Everything is
and
awesome.
So I guess one more thing, just on the NFT thing is, and valuations, which we were talking about earlier. A joke I made a couple of weeks ago on social media was I saw Playboy was getting into the NFT game, and I made the joke that they were going to do NFTs, and the stock, it's funny, right? And the stock has done the stock has done quite well. So just let me pull up the chart while we're talking. It has gone from $10 to start the year to it closed today at $48. So a 5-bagger year to date. And so they're back, right? Like Hugh isn't running the game anymore, and they've got I don't know, all these partners signed up. They're getting into the NFT game. And so anyway, I don't know why I related that to crypto horses. I guess just because it's on the blockchain. But that stuff is getting value. It's blowing up. Obviously, we talked about last week how Dogecoin had a bigger market cap than all of the uranium sector. And so, NFTs are all over the place, right? Even the relatives of deceased sports people getting in on it, right? You and I saw the Ted Williams thing I guess that was this week, where his daughter or granddaughter is, selling some digital art that she had this guy create. And you also get a bat and a stay where Ted Williams grew up. So you're paying, literally someone's going to pay millions of dollars for this stuff, right? And it's a blend of things on the blockchain, things in the metaverse, as it were, and things in the real world. And of course, I remembered that Ted Williams' head is frozen, which is fucking weird. And I thought that you should get a tour of the place where his head is frozen for that kind of money.
Listen, just because we don't understand something or aren't willing to risk our hard-earned capital to speculate in it doesn't mean it's not going to do great, right? I think, look, I think, one of my favorite MCs, I grew up on a lot of hip hop, a lot of Mexican music, rock, 80s, you name it, house music in Chicago, just a variety of genres, but I've always been a hip hop kid, right? And look, Coinbase went public and it wasn't really out there too much, but one of my favorite MCs is a gentleman by the name of Nasir Jones. He made over $100 million on it going public because he got in and invested very early on. Eminem, everybody knows Eminem, whether you're old or young, black or white. He's dropping his first NFT drop this Sunday. It's called ShadyCon. So he's conducting his own virtual conference, and he's gonna, what he describes, provide a unique opportunity for collectors and fans to get their hands on original one-of-a-kind beats that the rapper has produced specifically for this release, as well as a set of NFT action figures that include him in some of his classic outfits. I am curious, and we'll follow up next week, Nick, what Eminem-inspired merch NFTs are able to bring in. And so, hey, kudos to the hip-hop community. Look, we lost a great one in DMX recently. Shock G from Digital Underground. It was one of the funnest groups that you ever did see back in the 90s. They were great. He just passed away. And it's good and enlightening to see a lot of these artists that are getting older, mid 40s, late 40s, continue to make inroads in these different financial assets. And I'm curious to see what this does. It should be interesting.
He could definitely have some sick rhymes with Cum Rocket.
He may already have.
Could be part of the deal.
It could be part of the deal. We'll see. Before we go, we got to talk about, something that I think the whole world was watching. The George Floyd murder trial. Derek Chauvin was found guilty on all charges. It took a whopping 10 hours, which is nothing in deliberation land, for the jurors to come to an agreement on 3 counts. They found him guilty on all 3. He looked as surprised as I was that they found him guilty on all 3. And not because the evidence wasn't there. That was clear to anybody with some common sense. But just because we know historically in this country, the way the justice system has acted in favor of police officers. I read something that I think of 15,000 police-related shootings that resulted in death. I think there were 5 convictions, and none of them were for murder, if I recall correctly, which is just a mind-boggling statistic. I may be off by 1 or 2 murders. The point isn't that, folks. The point is, rarely do police officers get indicted or even found guilty or even indicted for some of this stuff. It took a 9-minute video. And I think I watched a little bit towards the end. I was in the gym and I was watching a little bit on TV, and I couldn't figure out if the defense attorney was the prosecuting attorney or the defense attorney. He actually played the video back and told everybody, you can't believe what you see. I'm like, but you're showing it to us again. Stupid, right? I don't think he did his client any favors. I don't think he had to. I don't think there was a favor to do. But it did remind me that, there was a 9-year-old girl that was there that witnessed this whole thing, that was yelling at the officers because there were multiple. And mind you, the other 3 are up for trial here in a couple of weeks. We'll see how that goes. The ones that stood by and did nothing. But there was a 9-year-old that watched all of this that was yelling at Chauvin to get off of him. Get off of him. You're hurting him. And it just breaks my heart to see that something as obvious as that to a 9-year-old child was just dismissed. Whatever, human being. Again, let's assume the worst. Let's assume it wasn't George Floyd passing a $20 bill. Let's assume he was tripping off shrooms, LSD, crack, had a Tommy gun, was wielding a knife. Once that man is subdued and once he is handcuffed and he's no longer a threat, that's just a human being on the ground. And, a lot of collateral damage there. I think that little girl obviously is going to live with this forever. And there were a lot of young people that watched this and testified and had to relive it. And I'm glad that there was some accountability. Don't confuse this for justice. This is not justice. A man is dead. People are traumatized. Generations of families have been affected. But it's good to see some accountability. It gives me a little bit of hope moving forward, Nick.
I'll say everything you said just in a different way and start with a bit of caution because one conviction doesn't mean a sea change has occurred and that everything is okay and that everything will continue to go in the direction of accountability. Obviously, still a lot of work to do when it comes to retraining and how we recruit police and the rights we give them and how we hold them accountable, et cetera. But, after that little caveat there, I would say that obviously a lot of people saw it and not just that little girl. It resulted in an entire summer of protests last year. And I think that to call this mob justice, even with the protests, is inaccurate.
Correct.
I don't think the guilty verdict was a result of the protest. I think it was a result of the facts and the video evidence. I'd also point to how the police department first handled and reported the case to the public, calling it a medical incident. And so a warning all around to how, the police wordsmith these things right from inception, right from the get-go, to shift blame, to shift the narrative, and to frankly shift the facts. And so if nothing else, that's a major takeaway, is to basically not believe them at first blush, right? What else did I see about this? It was good to see law enforcement officers testify that the force he used was excessive. It was good to see law enforcement officers on the airwaves, on the news shows, saying similar things. And,
yes.
Tucker Carlson had a fit in one case when one officer was saying as much, but hopefully it's a warning, right? Not that the thin blue line has crumbled, but that it has at least a crack in it, and that officers will now think twice about employing force when not necessary. And then I guess just ending on a bit of caution is, the due process is on both sides, because immediately on the heels of this verdict, you had a situation unfold where unfortunately a young girl lost her life. And that situation is not as clear as George Floyd, right? Where this young girl had a knife and was in the process of fighting with someone else. And so it's, I guess I would just end by saying that it's a very tough situation. And that's why body cameras are so important, and making sure that they're on is so important, and that we really make sure we have a clear view of each individual case before we go jumping to conclusions like some celebrities and politicians did this week.
Agreed. And the incident you're referring to is a young lady in Ohio. Preliminary information. And actually, before I get to this incident, I have to say, excellent points about the way that the police wordsmiths presented the facts. Shit show job by the media that repeated them, because it's the media's job to question, despite what they've been told for the last, several years. It's their job to question everything and get to the truth of the matter, right? And I think all it would have taken is just a little bit of a pause before they reported this as a medical incident and parroted what the police union wanted out there, right? It creates, again, a narrative. And so shame on the media for the media that reported it that way. Now, as it relates to this young lady in Ohio, apparently she was being assaulted by multiple girls. She had a knife. It sounds like it was her that called the police saying, "I'm being assaulted. I'm afraid." She got her hands on a knife. Whether she had it or picked it up, don't know. She was lunging towards one of the girls that was assaulting her, jumping her. Officer was on the scene, yelled, "Get down," used his gun and shot her 4 times as opposed to using a taser. Again, I asked 2 questions, split moment situation. Absolutely. Clearly the tasers are effective, because we've seen people be neutralized by tasers immediately. Right. And so the culture point that you bring up, Nick, and the training point that you bring up is I think critical moving forward. I think we have to do a better job of de-escalation on the police side of it. I think that, I saw the video, and again, it's heartbreaking to see it. Yeah, I don't see where a taser couldn't have been used to get her to drop that knife in the moment. And, bottom line is, yeah.
Well, it's not what they're trained to do is the thing. And so I guess the point I was trying to make was, and maybe this is what you're saying as well, is that, in the Derek Chauvin case, clearly he didn't need to use that level of force to restrain the gentleman. In this case, the one we're talking about now, it's heat of the moment, different circumstances.
Absolutely.
The person is armed. And so in the context of the current law and training, there's, that officer's, no charges will ever, not that he probably didn't even break the law. I guess what I'm saying is he probably followed training, right? It's just a sad situation. And so, to retrain. And so, you pull the taser instead of the gun is an arduous task. And I guess the statistic I read this week was that most officers in most cities undergo, to become a police officer, over 50 hours of like weapons and defense training and 8 hours or less of de-escalation training. And it seems that one of the things could be making those a little bit more balanced, making those a bit more balanced, I would say. That one's it's a real tough situation, and so it's sort of tough to touch.
Yep, tough all the way around, and probably legal in the eyes of the law. I'm no expert in Ohio law, but I would say, I think you're probably right. I think the way the laws are written, clearly someone was in danger. Clearly there was a weapon. It was being brandished. Heat of the moment, tough all the way around. Let's pivot before we go, and something that I think is a positive, but again, back to Uncle Joe coming for our money. The House passed a bill on Monday that would allow banks and financial institutions to work with cannabis businesses. You and I know, Nick, from deals that you've participated in privately and deals that I participated in privately, that it gets really hard when the banks don't want to transact your shares, right? Whether that's removing a legend on a private deal or depositing your shares or allowing you to resell the shares eventually one day, whether they do well or not. And so, this was approved in a 321 to 101 vote. It goes to the Senate now. Senate Leader Charles Schumer has said it will receive the vote. And so this will allow legitimate cannabis businesses to transact in a very legal and direct and open way. And of course, it opens the door for taxation by states that need the revenue, right? But step in the right direction, in my opinion. Thoughts, Mr. Hodge, before we get out of here?
It's a step in the right direction. Cannabis stocks are undergoing a pullback, a bit of a transition as new names emerge and as new legislation emerges, like the bill you're talking about, and also in Mexico, it's reached a sort of a sea change point in public perception, where Pew was saying last week that over 91% of U.S. adults say that marijuana should either be legal for medical and recreational use, or at least just medical use. And so here to stay, and you're going to have to obviously let it become regulated. And we've talked recently about how the liquor industry has sort of stepped up to guide that because they have a stake in it. And so this would be a logical course of action. We would still like to get it descheduled, of course, but to be able to transact would not only make it easier for us to deposit shares, but to be able to buy it, it would increase sales because it wouldn't be a cash only business, right? You wouldn't have to go to the ATM and have cash all the time. You'd be able to put it on a debit or even a credit card, perhaps. And so perhaps a catalyst for expanded sales in the industry, because you're not limited in the method of payments you can use to buy the grass, Gerardo.
It'll kill your kids, guys. Be careful with this stuff, that reefer.
But good to see.
Good to see is right. Any quick thoughts on Caitlyn Jenner and Matthew McConaughey potentially running for governors of their respective states in California and Texas?
It's just perfect, isn't it? It's idiocracy. It's perfect for the time.
Great documentary. It was a movie, actually, right? I think now it's morphed into a documentary.
I mean, it's crazy, Gerardo. So I knew it was going to come up in this podcast, and maybe we'll talk more about it next week. But I mean, what do you say?
I am Gerardo Del Real along with Mr. Nick Hodge. This was episode 114 of Bizarro World. Get your meditation on, everybody. Have a great weekend.
See ya.